up, everyone? Welcome back. It's Achara Cook, joined by Jabi Koay. It's so weird doing intros. Thank you so much for joining us again. So the last one we watched was the intro, and that set up a very cool premise for checking out the Valmiki Ramayana. And being someone who, I love learning about stuff, and I really like the way it's presented, I'm very excited to carry on with this. So we are looking at Season 1, Episode 3. This is called Ayodhya, the greatest and the grandest city on earth. Fun fact, one of our ancient capitals, when I say our, I mean in Thailand, one of Thailand's ancient capitals is called Ayutthaya, and I imagine it's probably drawn from this, so that's super cool. And then the next episode that we're going to watch is episode 7. It's called Vanaras. And also, you guys, if you're interested in this and want to learn more, by all means, don't wait for us to catch up. Go ahead and visit 21 Notes. There's loads of bite-sized episodes there talking about the Valmiki Ramayana, so you should check it out. Anyway, let's jump into episode 3. Here we go.
This is Valmiki Ramayana, Season 1, Episode 3. Ayodhya, the greatest and the grandest city on earth. Yep, you heard it right.
Oh.
Of course, we are not talking of Ayodhya of today.
Where is it?
Rewind back a few thousand years. Valmiki tells us what this city on the southern bank of the Sharayu River looks like. Ayata dasha cha dvecha yojanani mahapuri Shrimati Tridi Vistirana Suvibhakta Mahapatha. With well laid out streets, the beautiful and prosperous city of Ayodhya was 12 yojanas long and 3 yojanas wide. Rajamargena Mahata Suvibhaktena Shobhita Mukta Pushpavakirnena Jalasiktena Nityashah. A wide tree-lined royal boulevard ran through the center of the city. It was sprinkled with water daily. The city had beautiful gates and areas marked for different markets.
I wonder if you can still see
urban zoning.
This.
Its palaces were perfectly constructed in rows and inhabited by the noblest of men. Its mansions were adorned with precious stones.
Wow.
It was surrounded by a moat and impregnable.
What was crime like?
No other city on earth was comparable to Ayodhya.
Sounds
in
delightful.
Ayodhya, we are told by Valmiki that women in groups roamed around freely, and that the city had many theatre groups that comprised entirely of women.
Oh, that's nice.
This flies in the face of this mental construct we have in mind. Past equal to bad for women, and modern equal to good or getting better for women.
Okay.
Now, that really depends on where you place the marker for past. If that is 100 or 200 years ago, then the construct is valid. But it appears that the construct is not valid if you slide the marker back a few thousand years. It is also interesting that Valmiki thought it important to mention that the city was then safe for women.
Yeah, I wonder
Women's
why.
safety in public spaces still remains a critical issue for our modern cities across the world.
That's true.
Here is another interesting adjective Valmiki has used for Ayodhya. Grihair vichitrai rupashobhitam, adorned with houses of eclectic design or experimental architecture.
Oh.
Sounds like the Shard, the Gherkin, and the walkie-talkie buildings in London. You may or may not like them, but they are different for sure.
Yeah.
As an aside, if we were to match the description of Ayodhya as told by Valmiki with cities of today, which city would have the closest match?
Singapore.
Now, a city is not just roads and buildings. What kind of life did the people of Ayodhya lead? How did they govern themselves? We will see this in the next episode.
The notion that things were bad for women before and better now is something interesting to me, because I've found myself having that thought at one point and then having to challenge that thought in conversation with other people. Well, this mostly relates to film. The notion that women never had good roles and never, had were never the central character, or they never had strong characters. It's actually they did. Somehow history just gets rewritten right? The notion that women historically always had it harder or didn't live safely. It's like, okay, that's an interesting data point to have, because it seems like whenever you see women portrayed in history, especially European or Western history, it's often viewed through the lens of women were basically property, and that's it. And nothing more.
I think it's fascinating, right? Everything that he's talking about with this city. And I think it is possible because, I mean, you go back in history and there were certain times, like, I'm not like well up on my history, but like a long time ago, in many places, they had a golden era of history, you know, where it was prosperous, where people were making great inventions, and like technology was moving forward at a fast pace, and people were learning and discovering new things, and it was a great time for art and science. And so I truly believe that could have been what Ayodhya was, and it certainly sounds like that.
Anywho, moving forward.
Yes, let's check out the next video. This is episode 7, Vanaras. They changed the color
this is
now.
Valmiki Ramayana, Season 1, Episode 7, Vanaras.
Looks like
Looks
Who
like
Wants to Be a
Who Wants to Be a
Millionaire.
Millionaire.
Yeah.
Were they monkeys? Or were they primitive tribes? Or were they a different race altogether? The answer is most emphatically none of the above.
Oh.
Valmiki has spelled out in no uncertain terms that the Vanaras were Vanacharinaha, people who roamed in the forests. And they were not a different race. Their genetic roots were the same as that of the city dwellers. Also, not only were they physically very strong, but they were extremely intelligent too.
Interesting.
The Vanaras wore a tail and a headdress like a monkey, just as some tribal communities wear horns on their head. But there is no doubt that they were humans.
That's so
Even
cool.
in our times, fat cats in white shirts and black suits may look like penguins, but they are not penguins, nor are
That's
they
funny.
cats. They are CEOs, investment bankers, and management consultants. And not all the forest-dwelling folks wore tails. Some resembled bears. Essentially, Vanamrati iti Vanarah. The one who lives off the forest is a Vanar. Over time, the meaning became more limited, and the word Vanar started being used to denote monkeys only. Further, Valmiki says, Rukshishu cha tatha jata Vanarah kinnarishu cha. Some of the Vanaras were born to forest dwellers who dressed up like bears, and to Gandharvas. If Ruksha referred to bears and not to people who wore a bear skin, and Vanaras referred to monkeys and not to people who donned a face mask and a tail, then the above sentence by Valmiki would mean that monkeys were born to bears, which is obviously not what he meant.
Right. That would be weird.
Some of the Vanaras were born to rishis, just like some of the Rakshasas, including Ravan, as well as some of the citizens of Ayodhya and other cities. The notion that forest communities were primitive people that were racially different from city-based people is absolutely false. Vanaras were physically very powerful, and they were also very intelligent. The intelligence part unfortunately got glossed over in some of the later retellings. But Valmiki is clear. The Vanaras were Nayadnyan Buddhi Sampannan Vishnutulya Parakraman, knowers of statecraft, endowed with intellect, and equal to Vishnu in prowess. Further, they were spread across forests and mountains throughout the world. Once again, the notion that the Vanaras were only in South India is completely incorrect. Iyam Prithvi Saparvata Vanarnava Kirnataihi. This earth, with its mountains, forests, and seas, was pervaded by them. And Bhuv Samavrita Babhuva. The earth became covered by them.
What?
Extremely unfortunately, Vanaras are almost always characterized as monkeys in popular culture. Look at most contemporary comics, cartoons, or pictures on Ramayana. But look further back in history, and there is no confusion. For example, in the sculptures depicting Ramayana scenes at Ellora and Angkor Wat, Hanuman and the Vanaras are shown in a form, size, and proportion very similar to Ram and Lakshman. The only difference is that they are wearing a mask and a tail.
Interesting.
Oh, that's wild. Let's talk about the Vanaras.
Well, the most fascinating thing that I got from this was the notion that there is for lack of a better word, a misinterpretation that transpires over time due to things having its like legendary status. We have a famous story in the Bible called David and Goliath, and the way it was conveyed to me as a kid is, David is a normal-sized man, and Goliath is the size of a building.
Yeah.
And that's how it was conveyed to me through cartoons and whatever. Later on as a grown-up, you're like, well, probably wasn't like that. It was probably like, he was just a really big dude. And then David was just a regular guy.
Yeah, or like a shorter guy.
Well, whatever the case may be, there was definitely a disparity in size between the two of them, be it height or just general size, right? And so that just over time it takes on a legendary nature and becomes mythologized in a way that some details get just changed over time. The other thing, for some reason, it reminded me of is, and this series in general kind of reminds me of, is Kurzgesagt.
Oh, yeah.
They talked about the way we look at fossils, the way we look at the bones of extinct creatures like dinosaurs or whatever. And one of the theories that came up was maybe we have it all wrong. Because like the way we envision a T-Rex is the way it's been popularized in the Jurassic Park films by Steven Spielberg. And there is a texture to them that is very reptilian, right? It's recognizable when you just compare it to creatures we see today. But there's a possibility that a lot of these creatures looked wildly different, and they might have been very colorful and had all kinds of feathers. If you take away like the human form and all you have left is the bones, and then you give that to a species millions of years from now to interpret what that person looked like, they might come up with a totally different thing than how we actually look. I can totally see a misinterpretation taking form over time because of all the aforementioned.
It changes, I guess, as you go to different regions, right? Because Hanuman is huge across the world, and especially in Asia. So like in Thailand, we love Hanuman. And then, even in Chinese Buddhism, like they have the story, and Hanuman is out there, Journey to the West, like all of that. And he's like a superhero. But it's interesting hearing how he was described in Valmiki's text, or how his people were described, because they're just like, they live in the forest. And it totally makes sense as to why they might be stronger than the average, because I would imagine if you live in the forest versus living in the city, you have to be more physical. You might have to be lifting heavy things and like running around and doing other things. And so as a result, your physicality might be different. You're just stronger because that's your lifestyle, And this is awesome. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Please do check out 21 Notes if this piques your interest. If you want to know more, don't wait for us. Go ahead and come back and let us know your thoughts. We will see you in the next one. I'm Achara Kirk. This is
Jabi Kuwait.
Peace out.